first thing that we got to look at with freedom of religion is there are two clauses for freedom of religion. There's the Establishment Clause. Okay? What the Establishment Clause says, when you actually look at the text of it, is it prohibits the national government from establishing any sort of official religion. Okay, now, do we have an official religion? No? So if you pulled out a bill right now, right? So if I pull out a little $5 bill, I'm not going to find on here, "In God We Trust." It doesn't say that?
It's not specific.
What's that, Will?
It's not specific.
It's correct. It is a broad, generalized God. Doesn't mean it's a Muslim God, a Christian God, a Hindu God, a Buddhist God, or whatever God. Okay? You make whatever God you want. Okay? And we have a tradition, right? If you ever have to go to court, right, and you're ever under oath, okay, there are actually ways for, if you don't want to put your hand on the Bible or you don't want to swear to God, there are ways around that if you determine that you're an atheist and you don't believe in anything. That's the wrong way of saying that. I don't mean you don't believe in anything, but you don't believe in any sort of higher power. All right? So, it becomes nationalized with the 14th Amendment. All right? What that means, that nationalizing effect that we're talking about, that means that the state cannot establish an official religion either. Right? And we don't have a lot of examples of that historically. Probably the only two I could really think of is perhaps Utah might want to establish itself as a Mormon state, because Utah as a state was created by Mormons fleeing upstate New York in the 1800s. Right? Only other real example would be the state of Maryland, which was created as a Catholic colony. Right? So it was actually the place where, like, Catholics came to when they came to the United States. Alright. We believe in a basic sort of accommodationist view, which means we try to be as accommodating as possible, right? You'll see it from time to time, okay, to where you can have like nativity scenes in front of a government building. Right, so long as it's like an all-encompassing nativity scene, or it's a nativity scene that is not deemed to be directly promoting one specific, entity, deity, whatever you want to say. Sort of same concept with ideas like public prayer or things like that. Like I told you, Congress still starts with a prayer, okay, because it's sort of their tradition, but it's a very broad, generalized, non-denominational, like, God is great, God is good, now we thank you for this food, or whatever, you know what I mean? Like one of those sort of, I don't want to say meaningless prayers, but that idea. And we then have the separationist view, and that's not generally what we see in this country, despite the fact that a lot of people think that this is the basic foundation of our religious establishment, our religious clauses here in the United States, right? Right. We have a long-standing tradition. We believe that in the United States, right, in the Constitution, it says a separation of church and state. Yes. Except if you actually read the Constitution of the United States of America, that terminology does not show up anywhere. There's nothing in the Constitution that says officially we have a separation of church and state. It simply says that you can't establish an official religion, you can't prevent somebody else from practicing their religion, but it doesn't mean that you couldn't have a blending of or an inclusion of religious ideologies in our government institutions. And endorsement view, that's actually the direct violation of the Establishment Clause, right? Like that would be endorsing a specific religion. And that's one of the things that the Supreme Court will look at to determine whether or not the Establishment Clause is being violated, right? Are we endorsing a specific religion? And we actually have an example of this with the 10 Commandments outside of a courthouse. And to me, the 10 Commandments are basic guidelines that everybody should like. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, don't kill. I don't know the 10 Commandments that well, but, right? I mean, outside of like there's only one God and don't worship another God, the rest of it's really just basic morality. But it was deemed inappropriate. I want to say this was a courthouse in Alabama as well, right? Non-preferentialist view is you can't favor a particular religion, right? So it's a step below the endorsement view. This is sort of how we actually function, right? Like I said, it shows up in God we trust on our money. You place your hand on a Bible and you swear to God to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in court, right? But again, very broad, very generalized, whatever God you sort of see or deem fit in that instance. Okay, so Lemon v. Kurtzman. And this is one of the cases that somebody just chose or was assigned. I don't remember which. Okay, but Lemon v. Kurtzman is going to be our case that is going to serve as sort of the foundation of the groundwork for the Supreme Court determining whether or not something is in violation of the Establishment Clause. All right? And the Supreme Court is going to look at three different aspects of this now. Right? So the first is, what is the purpose of what is going on? Okay? Is there a non-secular or religious purpose? If the only purpose that you can determine is a religious purpose, then it violates the Establishment Clause. Okay? If you can find a non-secular and a secular purpose, doesn't necessarily violate the Establishment Clause. Okay? Number two, does it enhance or inhibit a specific religion? Right? And this goes in either direction. So the promotion of one specific religion is a violation of the Establishment Clause, but they actually say that the inhibiting of a specific religion is part of it. Right? So we know like in France, I want to say was it France? There's a European country that passed a law that said burqas are illegal. Was France? Okay, do you remember that correctly? Okay. That wouldn't fly in the United States because that is an inhibiting of religion. Okay? And it would actually, you could argue it under the free exercise or the Establishment Clause, but with the Lemon test here, right, it's inhibiting the practice or it's inhibiting the Muslim religion. Okay? Third and finally, is there excessive entanglement with the government? Okay? Anna Lee, do me a favor, define the word excessive.
Like over the
Marshall, what'd you say?
It's a trick question.
It is a trick
Oh
question.
my god. I gotta get on it.
But why is it a trick question?
Because it's up to whoever makes up the definition.
It's a subjective term. Okay, what is excessive to one person is not excessive to another. All right, which makes that really different. Now, if any one of the three of these, any one of the three is present, okay, then it's unconstitutional. Okay, you don't have to check all three boxes, you only got to check one. All right, Engel v. Vital, you cannot have state-sponsored prayer in public school. This should be relatively easy for you to understand because we have our little moment of silence where they tell you specifically that you can reflect, pray, or meditate, or engage in any other silent activity so as not to disrupt what other students around you. What is it?
Interfere and distract other students.
Yeah, see you hear it literally every day, right? And it goes into this concept, right? And so things like this that get where it gets challenged is like back in the day, you used to sit in a locker room before like a football game, right? And your football team would have its own little minister that would come down and like you pray before you went out on the field. Okay? That would be considered state sponsored. That's different than the athletes individually at the end of the game voluntarily deciding to get together at the middle of the field and pray together. And that would be protected because it's not led or sponsored by some sort of state entity. Okay? And you could opt out if you want. It's hard to make the argument that a kid in the locker room can really opt out if everybody has to sit in the locker room during that time. Abington v. Shemp, no devotional Bible readings in public school. Hey, you know what that word means?
Dedicated?
So, devotional is sort of like for religious purposes, like for your enhancement of religious understanding. Are you allowed to read the Bible in school?
Yes.
You actually are. You're allowed to be assigned the Bible in school. You can have an English teacher or a history teacher that assigns you to read the Bible if they look at that either from a literary or a historical standpoint. If they treat it as either a literary or historical text, but not as a religious text. Alright? State laws are required in teaching of creation science are unconstitutional. That goes back to where it was really first challenged with the Scopes monkey trial that I'm sure y'all learned about. Right? Epperson v. Arkansas, state laws can't prohibit the teaching of evolution in school. Okay? Again, that same sort of concept. Alright, it's this idea of, and truthfully I would make the argument that a school's responsibility is to provide students with as much information as possible and allow students to reach their own conclusions. Okay, that's what I tried to do in this class specifically. Alright? If at the end of this class you can figure out if I'm a Republican or a Democrat, I probably haven't done my job with it. Alright? That being said, I promise you you'll be wrong. Okay. Other religious freedoms, so release time is constitutional. That's basically the moment of silence, right? Tax exemptions for churches is constitutional because churches can claim to be nonprofit organizations that do engage in charitable work, same as any other charity that doesn't have to pay taxes.
That's dumb.
Right? What?
Church is not being taxed.
It's dumb?
Yeah.
Why?
Because they're like, sow your seed and then buy some private jet.
Oh, okay. Those are rare. Well, look, I'm not going to say those don't happen. They absolutely do.
It's not rare.
Compared to the number of churches in America, percentage-wise, it is a extremely small percentage. Right? Okay, your little, because there's a church down here on the corner.
There's like 9 churches.
Well, there's churches. I used to live in North Carolina. Like there are literally churches next door to churches in North Carolina. Okay. And I'm not talking like a Catholic church and then a Protestant church. I'm talking like Methodist and then like First Church of Christ and then a Baptist church all like right next. I don't even know what the difference is. Right? Okay. But if you think about all the like the little small churches that exist in America, and that's again percentage-wise where a vast majority of the charitable donations are going, those are not engaged in some sort of like for-profit scheme for the individual running it. Not to say that that doesn't happen. There was a guy named Jim Baker back in like the no relations. And he has 2 Ks in his last name. I want to say it was late 80s or early 90s, who was one of these like on TV televangelists who wife caught him cheating, and then she like dropped the bombshell and showed everybody the books because he was embezzling. Okay, so yes, it does happen. Alright, but truthfully, and you probably don't realize this, to be a charitable organization doesn't mean that you can't make money, right? I mean, one of our requirements for sort of charitable organizations is, I want to say like, it's sadly, it's only like 50 cents for every dollar that's donated goes to the cause in which you are raising money for, right? The rest of it can go to like administrative costs and things of that nature.
It's just like as long as you make less or the same amount of money as you made, or as long as you give back like as much or more.
That's what I said. I thought it was 50% or 50 cents. Maybe it's 51 cents. But you get my point. I mean, that's 49% then can go to paying people's salaries. I mean, there are people that run charities that make 2 or 3 times what I make as a teacher. Yeah. All right, that's a true statement. Okay. We're out of time, aren't we?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll get to free exercise then tomorrow. Go ahead and pack up.